Welcome back to the Operators Podcast. You're here with the face of e-com, Sean. We're having a very special episode for you. We are talking wealth advisors, what to actually do in your personal life. It's like kind of not e-com related content, but if you're an up and coming entrepreneur, you have a little bit of money and you're curious like what the dark side of like wealth advisors look like, you should join in, listen, enjoy it. It's kind of inspired by Moyes. He had a very famous, very viral tweet. He talked about some of the stuff they do really bad, some of the stuff they do really well. Anyway, thanks for being here. Thank you for Phil. They pay for this episode and they bring you this content free of charge. I would put this behind a paywall, but they're bringing it to you for free with the help of Northbeam, the #1 MTA solution on earth. They have partnerships with Facebook, they have partnerships with Snapchat, partnerships with everybody, and Postscript, the SMS of choice. Interact with my brand, Jason's brand, anybody's brand who's worth their salt. You're getting a text message from Postscript. So thank you for being here. Thank you for listening to the Operators Podcast. Really, you make all this possible. Thank you for buying wallets. I love you. Talk to you later.
Guys, I want to talk to you about Fulfill, one of the sponsors of the pod, and why we are big fans. They have built a modern ERP that is built for digital entrepreneurs that want to keep their books in order and want to make sure that they're driving their business forward, have good reporting and good visibility into their inventory, into their financials. These are things you have to grow, and Fulfill has done a great job of it. One of the things I love about the company, they're bootstrapped. They don't have outside investors, so they're able to build the company the right way. From their pricing model to how they add features, they've been able to do it in a way that's entrepreneur friendly. Sean uses them. They're a great product. I would encourage everybody to check them out. Fulfill, thanks for being a sponsor of the pod.
Governor Mike really is showing up today. I mean, look at this starched white shirt, haircut. What are you? Do you have a fundraiser for your gubernatorial run today?
I've got a super PAC that I'm raising for. No, actually, I get invited to do a lot of speaking things, and I did one today, and so you get a much more professional looking version of me today, Jason.
And look at this. I mean, I'm still like in vacation mode. I haven't shaved in a while. I've got my Dreamy Sugar hat on. Do you know, guys? For anyone with children, this is one of my oldest friends. They literally grew up on my street in Staten Island. He's 2 years older than me, and he's an incredible musician. And he's got a streaming service. Well, he does lullabies, okay? And so, Sean, when you have that kid, like you go and so he's got like 20 million streams on Spotify, and his like the icon is this bear. And he's like wanted to sell bears, and he actually works for me at Hexclad. I'm like, all right, fine, like let's do it. So we like made the bears and everything. So Dreamy Sugar on Spotify, great lullabies, like all kinds of different cool, like that he takes pop songs and turns them into lullabies. They're really fun. And he's selling bears, and so go buy some beautiful teddy bears from Dreamy Sugar. But Mike, seriously, dude, I saw this tweet of the tunnel at the Oklahoma State? Well, what's it? It's a simple monitor when they run that tunnel. What the heck? Yeah.
We're starting to do more sports stuff, and it's been pretty good. At OU, I'm an OU alum. A lot of us are, and so we've got a pretty special relationship there. And so we actually did a pretty cool, like in stadium. They made all these cups based on different eras of OU football. And so like there was one about the Switzer era, and it had a particular font and stuff that was very kind of retro, and they sold out, like 45 minutes before kickoff. So that was pretty cool. Although the problem is anytime you do something like that, I just get blown up with text afterwards. People are like, oh, do you have any more of those? My wife's getting texts. And so, but yeah, it's been pretty fun, man, to lean into the sports stuff.
We did the Yankees, right? And we are now being blown up by professional sports teams left and right. The Chicago Bulls. I told you guys that the mascot for the LA Kings literally showed up at our office. We got photos of I don't know what he is. He's like a bear or something. The lion. He's like the guys at our office. It was really so much fun. And they're like, the sales guys like, Luke Robitaille wants to go to dinner with you, Danny and Jason. And I'm It's like they're all over us. I got, now the Mets are on us, and like I know the owner of the Mets now, and I feel really bad because like I know the owner of the Mets, and we did a deal with the Yankees, but it's you guys are just locking up Oklahoma basically.
We're trying to. I mean, like that's what you do, right? You get like a home base and you expand out. Okay, so check this out. I'll tell two Thunder stories. They're business front office guys. They're great. Like they're just great at their job, and they kind of have to be because when you're in a small market, there's just not as many potential, sponsors or whatever. So I'm pretty close with these guys, like, and they've become friends. So for my 45th birthday, I did this dinner that a bunch of guys that are local were at, and neither of them could make it. But the server came in like 15 minutes in and is like, I've got 45 blue kamikaze shots on the Thunder here. She had just like trays. I'm like, okay, that's a great. I was like, the Thunder blue. I'm like, that is a great. And then I show up to my office on Monday, and they had sent me a package. I can show it to you guys here in a second. But basically, they've got this photo from the Thunder playing the Mavericks in the playoffs. And I've got courtside tickets, and they've got this photo where like the player is like basically like in my lap. He's just hit a three, and all the fans are going crazy. My co-founder Brian's in it, and it's just like this great moment that they captured, and they sent me something framed from it. So I'm like, man, I could learn a lot from you guys about like, developing partnerships and that kind of stuff.
Well, look, you guys are talking about doing cool rich guy stuff. So we have Jason hanging out with the Mets founder, or Mets owner. We have like sports teams like individually hitting you up and giving you birthday gifts. This is going to be an off the cuff episode. Okay. We don't have Matt here. He typically runs the ship here. I want to ask you guys about wealth advisors. There's a very viral tweet from Moise. We'll put it right here, talking about how wealth advisors are and how they never pay for themselves. And you guys have a little bit of cheddar. So I want to hear your perspective on wealth advisors, your experience, and if you've wasted time, money, energy. And then I'll share some personal stories as well. So
I bet Jason's going to bring some freaking advice today. I just feel it. He's like, when you go to, you probably have never been to a rodeo, but when you go to a rodeo, there's this point when they're on the bull and it's in the pen, but they haven't lifted the gate yet. And you can just tell, man, that thing's ready to rip. That is Jason right now. I feel like you got to lead us, Jason.
All right. Well, look, I don't know if I don't have that kind of juice in me for this topic, but I mean, when it comes to just overall, I like to think in terms of overall portfolio management in general. Like I can bring a lot of heat with that. I went to Columbia Business School, got my MBA in finance. I'm a CFA charter holder, which is what all the portfolio managers are. I had to learn all that garbage about derivatives and fixed income and portfolio management. It was awful. I just think that people really don't understand portfolio theory, and I also think that people are just so overconfident when it comes to their own ability to make good investment decisions and picking in stocks. Like when people go off in our chat about the stocks that they're picking and everything else, I'm like, come on, guys, you cannot beat the market over time. If you want to take like 10% of your portfolio, go have some fun with it. Like I know Sean enjoys picking stocks here and there, and then investing in D2C companies is like, dude, we're all of our net worth is already tied up. So like, no, I'm sorry. I will advise your company. I will help you. I will not invest in your company. When it comes to money managers, I think it's not so much about like what they're going to do for you from an investment performance perspective, but if you have enough money, you're absolutely crazy to not use a wealth manager from a big firm, right? So right now, I'm with JP Morgan Chase. They're our bank anyway, and they just can do stuff for you to make your life easier in terms of financing. If you want to buy, if you want to buy a house, if you want to buy anything, they really, if you want to go buy something really, really big, mortgages, etc., they will do different sort of lines of credit. They understand ways to like maximize tax deductibility if you're making a big purchase. Mortgage interest deduction technically stops at $750K. So if you own like millions and millions worth of real estate, like these guys are very creative. So you get out of them what you put into it. You need to push them. It's just like anyone. It's just like any agency that works for your brand. You need to be on top of these people and the squeaky wheel gets the grease. And if you have a big enough portfolio, they are going to pay attention to you. They I haven't been with JP Morgan for that long. It's only been a couple of years. And so I haven't seen like particularly any incredible investment opportunities that I want to jump all over personally. But I'm investing in like my own personal real estate because that's to me is what I want to do for me. So that's sort of my take. I'm sorry, Mike, if it's not as hot of a take as
I was
you would have
just, I
expected.
knew there were some F-bombs coming, and I'm mildly disappointed. I got all dressed up for this and I didn't even get a
By the
tirade.
way, when I was on vacation in the Hamptons, I decided that I am going to stop with the F-bombs. Like I'm going to go cold turkey on F-bombs. And it lasted about 4 minutes. But I am actually really trying to dial that back. It's just really not necessary. So I'm going to take a page out of Mike's book.
This is a total aside, but it was very funny. I've commented about the like trying to get double meat while paying for single meat at Chipotle thing before on this pod. So I'm flying through Twitter. I'm like between meetings. I've got like 2 minutes and I see a meme about this of somebody like saying like, here's how you get, the double meat. And, I did not read all the way through it. I was like, oh, I get the gist. This is funny. I'm going to post it because this is kind of a thing people associate me with. So I post it and I check in on the post and it's kind of like doing numbers. And the first response I see is Jason Panzer, I am appalled by this language. And I'm like, oh no. And I go in and I'm like, this dude dropped an F-bomb in the meme. And so anyway, that's what I get.
I couldn't
for
believe
not
you
reading.
retweeted an F-bomb. I mean, that's crazy, Mike.
I know. It got deleted. Anyway, so, but when I'm like, I love the fact that your reply, I was like, if Jason's saying that, there was something in here. I did not read this well enough.
Dude, politicians retweet like porn, and Mike's out here worried if you retweeted the F word. Dude, you are built different, bud. But Mike, I want to hear your perspective on wealth managers and assets, and then I'm going to go through what I think the 5 promises of wealth managers are, and then we can break them down one by one and share you guys' experience.
So really high level, if you're an entrepreneur, the most common thing you'll hear from entrepreneurs is that they've gone bankrupt, right? Like not everybody. Fortunately, I've not gone bankrupt. Jason, you gone through a bankruptcy? Nope. Sean, you haven't. So
I will say though that I went through hell for a few years at one point, but definitely not that to that level.
Yeah, not to zero. It was crazy. Somebody posted, there was a clip that got posted to the Peloton founder, I think. And he's basically going to zero.
Is that true, by the way?
I don't know. He was talking about it. He's like, I'm unwinding everything and I don't even know. He's like, I might be bankrupt. I don't know. I don't know what my tax bill is going to come out to next year. I don't know what some of these private equity investments are going to be. But it was really interesting. He's like, I really might be going to zero, which seems just inconceivable. But the reason why I bring that up is that I'm fascinated by this idea that your personality's biggest strengths are also its biggest weaknesses. That the things that make entrepreneurs great, the vision and the willingness to charge hell with a squirt gun and to believe in yourself when everybody else thinks it's a stupid idea. Those things are great for creating businesses. Those are exactly the qualities that'll get you into bankruptcy. And so I think this idea of, if you're saying with a wealth advisor, I want someone that is going to help me protect myself from myself. Like, I think that makes a ton of sense. There's some really good examples in the pro sports world of wealth advisors where literally all they're doing is forcing these guys to put money aside that they can't touch because they know that they'll blow themselves up. There's a really famous example with Allen Iverson, I think, where the wealth advisor put a bunch of money in a trust that he could not touch until he was 45. And Allen Iverson basically bankrupted himself, but he still had this trust waiting for him because he had a good financial advisor. So I think that aspect can be really helpful, especially if you're somebody who doesn't have great impulse control, to have someone in your life that's willing to help give structure and help prevent you from, these risk taking and, change things on a whim and go big, kind of personality traits from making really poor decisions. I think there's a ton of alpha there? No, I don't at all. And we can talk about that, but I don't think that's why people listening to this would probably. You shouldn't go to a wealth advisor because you're like, I want to beat the market. You should go to a wealth advisor because you're getting somebody who's going to give you structure and a plan where you're going to be doing something that's wise and diligent, hopefully.
Right. Okay. That's good advice, Mike. So let's break down the 5 promises of wealth advisors. The first one is control, and I think they do deliver on that. If you put money with a wealth advisor, they are incentivized to not let you take it out. And the reason why they're so nice to you, and the reason why like they want every additional dollar to be put into it, and that's one of Moises' critiques, is that I think, to paraphrase him, he's like, if you had an offer to loan Bill Gates $1 and he'll give you $1 billion, Goldman Sachs would say, "No, it's not very good. You should give it to us instead." Right now, that is a two-way street where they make it really hard for you to take all of your money out and bankrupt yourself. Right. So there's a level of control that they put on you that is probably necessary for a lot of people, especially if you're an impulsive gambling addict like most entrepreneurs. So I think that is one of the promises that they do deliver on. The second promise, Jason, you brought this up, is exclusive access to investment opportunities. And I think that is total bullshit. So one win for them is they will put controls around your money. A negative is they will offer you SpaceX stock that anybody can already get, right? If you are mildly connected to anyone on the internet, you can get SpaceX stock, and you will not be offered Sequoia shares. You will not be offered the best blue chip private equity deals, right? They don't have access. You're dealing with somebody who works for a living, right? You're so far removed from industry experts. Do you guys disagree with those first 2 points?
No, I think you're absolutely right, Sean. And we've talked about this before, but it's worth bringing back up that when you get access to a deal because of a special relationship that you have, that's where the alpha typically is. Like, oh, this person felt like they learned from me and they want to bring me on as an advisor. Or, I did this kindness to this person 3 years ago and now they want to kind of give me an opportunity. Those things are real and they happen all the time. And, honestly, sometimes fortunes are made in those ways. But for example, if there's an acquisition opportunity that's just going out to market, you're not going to get a great deal, right? Like everybody's seeing that. There's not going to be a lot of alpha in that usually. And so similarly, like if it's just some seed round that got blasted out to, 1,000 different people. So it's a really important distinction that those alpha generating opportunities are almost always through personal relationships and not, professional, like I'm paying you to be my money advisor ones.
Totally. Jason, have you ever been offered a deal that performed amazingly or you regretted being part of?
I've been offered, not through my financial advisor, but like through my network, a number of deals that I think are not open to. Well, look, I've been offered a lot of terrible deals and said no to them.
Yeah.
I'm offered terrible deals all the time.
Those are usually relationship based also. That's the trick. The trick is your uncle, wants to like bring back, Payless shoes, just crazy stuff that you'll hear from people. And you have to kind of separate those apart, right?
Well, yeah. And look, there's actually some really good stuff out there that you can find. Like there are actually really good ways to get a better yield at a fairly, in a security in a fairly senior position, in real estate deals, for example. If you can get access to them, and you need to be able to put enough money in, right? You need to be able to put in at least 6 figures, possibly 7 figures to get in. But there are cool real estate deals where you can be senior and have like a guaranteed 10% preferred return and a piece of the common if if you know the right people and you can put in the money. So that's all out there, and that may come from the right financial advisor, or it will come through your network. Like that just comes through my network because I've just worked in big corporate, big finance for a really long time. I just don't. I wish I had more money to take advantage of a lot of these opportunities, but they're out there. But you've got to be like you've got to be a 9-figure-ish person I think to really, really get the juice. You have to be like a 50 mil and up, probably like 100 mil. Or going, yeah. If you have more than a $25 million portfolio, like you can find some pretty cool stuff. Below that, it's just kind of like by the market.
Well, one thing that's worth mentioning here, Jason, and I've come to really appreciate this in recent years, is that these opportunities are often exceptionally illiquid. Like that sometimes when you get the really good opportunities, part of the reason why they exist is you've got to be willing to park, like you're saying, a pretty large nominal amount of money. And you might not see that for 5, 10 years, right? And that's most investors just can't do that. Like that's just not a reasonable way to do things. When you have a certain level of wealth, like those kind of investments can make sense because you can say, hey, I might be able to take $1 million and put it in this, and I don't need that for 5 years or 10 years or whatever. I can ride out the market ups and downs. There's not going to be any kind of liquidity crunch that I would feel where I have to go and get that money. Although I say that, and I just earlier I talked about the example with Peloton where their CEO was putting money in those types of deals, and now he probably wishes he had it out.
Totally.
Okay, that's amazing. Wow. I think we just got some real insight.
What was that? What did I just miss? What was that?
I have a soundboard.
Are you DJing now?
No. I mean, only for the podcast.
I like that Sean has his own like laugh track and applause track. How often do you use this, Sean?
Almost never. What's up, everybody? Welcome to the Operator's Northbeam ad unit. So 30 seconds, I'm going to tell you all about how if you have any problems with Northbeam, you can directly message Austin, the CEO. He is there. He will set up your ad account. He will make your bet. He'll give you cookies. Really, they have a dedicated team of people, probably 30, 40, 50 reps at this point, who will make sure Northbeam is working correctly and functioning so you can get amazing data out of this ecosystem. They will be more hands-on than any meta rep will ever be, and they're going to help you understand where your ad dollars are best spent, best positioned, and which ads are working. My team works with the Northbeam team literally every day. They're in my Slack. Maybe you don't get the same level of support as an operator, but they will be there to make sure it's working. And if you're not happy at all, just email Austin. He will take care of you. We use Northbeam every day. It's a benchmarking tool. It's super helpful for forecasting, daily pacing, inter-hour pacing. So we can see like if we just launched an ad in 2 hours, if it's working or not. That's what Northbeam does for us. So thank you, Northbeam, for the support. I'm customer probably number one. So thank you so much.
Well, one thing to add regarding Northbeam, because we just went through a contract renewal with them on their specifically on the MMM. And we got a pretty sweetheart deal, and I expect them to come back to us and raise our price, and they kind of deserve it. I was like, let me reach out to the team, and see how it's going, right? Because I'm not in the day to day. I get feedback, and the team was like, they have improved the MMM so much since we started it that they were like, we should definitely pay for this increase. So. And my team hates every agency and most SaaS. The only person that hates SaaS, the only more than my team is Sean, Frank. But yeah, I mean, they came to us. They're like, hey, you guys got the sweetheart deal. We wanted the first MMM clients. And I was very, very pleased when my team was like, it's really working well for us. So that's my little MMM plug.
The third thing wealth managers typically have access to is events. So if you care about celebrities or parties or whatever, they will have access to the coolest versions of those. I remember when that guy Kyle, he was like a pop star, had an awesome singer, like an awesome single out. When he was like peak fame, I went to dinner with him because Goldman Sachs wanted my money. So that was pretty sick. So if you care about that, they will do whatever it takes to keep your money. And typically, like, you'll have good access to other entrepreneurs. Like, think about it like a YPO, but like just dinners, just like once a quarter. So I've had good experience with those. Jason, you ever gone to any cool events?
Like wealth managers inviting you to events, you mean?
Yeah, I mean, dude, they'll always invite you to sports events, but anything that like truly was like one of one, like, that was worth the 1% fee I pay.
Only No, I mean, like the JP Morgan Founders Forum was awesome, but that's probably through our commercial bankers. So, no, just like silly, like golf outings and stuff like that, which is always fun. But no, nothing to really write home about. Not yet, at least.
Well, dude, they gotta fucking up there.
They gotta
I had a
step it
pretty
up.
good one. This is more event based, but the Bank of Oklahoma, they sponsored the Cotton Bowl, the OU Texas game with Bank of Texas, and I sat in a suite next to the president of the Bank of Oklahoma on the 50-yard line for the OU Texas game last year. That was a pretty good one.
Yeah, dude. Like, I mean, there are very few things that money can't buy, right? And like sometimes they have access to those type of events, like those connections. So that is worth the 1% per year you pay. The fourth one, Jason, you talked about this, is just like new financial instruments, like interest only mortgages. Or as an entrepreneur, it's really hard to get a mortgage. Like your W-2 income could be 60 grand a year, but your distributions could be 800,000. And like a traditional banker, if you don't have a good banking relationship, they will not loan you money. And that's where wealth like managers actually like pay for themselves, is like they'll get you a mortgage when you need it, or they'll get you loan on your stock or that type of shit. So, I mean, I haven't taken advantage of that yet, but I have a lot of friends who have. I mean, I assume that's how you guys are in your houses today. Maybe not Jason. He's had a long career. Jason, have you taken advantage of any like unique financial instruments provided by some sort of banking relationship, or you just know that shit because you're that world?
Yeah, well, I haven't yet, but I am going to, because I'm doing I'm renovating my house here, and I may be buying another house, and so it just makes sense to leverage that. But I'm working on it. I haven't yet.
Nice. Yeah. I mean, especially with interest rates being as high as they are, like, and you don't want to take money out of the market. That's where like a financial advisor can actually help, a wealth manager or whatever. And the fifth one is that I think about is like safety. We talked about like them helping you not screw yourself, but also just like the reason why I went to one is I had money in Robinhood. I had money in Wealthfront. I had money in Vanguard. I had money in public.com. I had like all of these pools of money that I'm like, oh, one of these could go down. So I should spread out as much as possible. Going to a wealth manager, they do that formally with levels of insurance that like they actually take care of. Right.
And that's real. Like if you were in Silicon Valley Bank, for example, there were a lot of people that had significant amounts of money there. There were companies, but also individuals. And banks, their FDIC insurance only goes to a certain level. When you're in private banking, which is kind of like, a type of wealth management, they have instruments where you can get more insurance. But for sure, like with the big multinationals, like there's a lot of reasons why at certain points you're just like, hey, it's not even about maximizing my interest rate on this. It's just I can't lose it. I'm not going to lose 10 million in principal or something because somebody's mortgage mortgage balance sheet is off or whatever. So I think that one for sure has popped up recently, Sean. And one of the things that you didn't mention in the previous one, or maybe you didn't, I missed it, is that the ability to borrow against non-liquid assets is really one of the ways. Like, Jason, are you doing some borrowing against non-liquid assets? Is that what you were saying?
Well, what I was going to say actually, Mike, is that I think the most important thing is that like you can really borrow against your portfolio.
Yeah, that's what I was
At
saying.
pretty good
Non-liquid
rates.
assets.
You can
Yeah.
borrow, you can borrow at pretty good rates. And on
Not
top
your
of
home,
that,
like borrowing against your home, most people can do that. But like if you've got $10 million in, stock that's illiquid, that's privately traded, it's kind of off the table unless you use a wealth, some kind of a wealth
or
manager.
if you just don't want to liquidate a bunch of stuff or liquidate or use a bunch of your cash, they'll just loan you money. And at the end of the day, like if you're making 4 to 5% in treasuries and they're going to loan you money, like the the vig that you're going to pay is it's not that much. And then like what I was saying earlier is there are creative ways to turn those loans into like more tax deductible or to use that as a shield and which you can't do with a traditional mortgage.
Yeah. So I want to clarify Jason's point, right? So you guys are making two very valid points. Mike's saying, hey, you can get loan on your private company stock, right? That is one awesome thing that only wealth managers can facilitate. The second thing is Jason has a big portfolio of public stock. He wants to buy a house. He doesn't want to sell it to get the cash for the down payment. They will loan him 25 to 50% of his portfolio value at a pretty low interest rate, and because they make the management fee, and they will just put up the 8% or whatever. They know you're good for it because it's essentially a pledged loan. You have all your stock there. So those are two different things, but are also the financial instruments that like you just don't get access to doing it independently.
This is a great time to say that the mother of all of these, like the most epic ever, is Adam Neumann. Adam Neumann, when WeWork was about to go public, got a $500 million personal line of credit, and he drew down $380 million. So, you look at your credit card and are like, oh, I'm a couple $1,000s away from my credit limit. Adam Neumann found a way to use $380 million on a personal line of credit based on his WeWork stock, which just always is like the mind blown emoji. But the other thing that's really interesting about this that makes this really relevant in today's world is that this has been a preferred way to pay for things. Like you don't want to sell your assets if you're Jeff Bezos, if you're Elon Musk. And so what they'll do is they will borrow against their assets so their assets can continue to appreciate. And the liberals view this as a way of them kind of circumnavigating taxes. And this is where the really crazy idea of let's tax unrealized capital gains came from, basically, is that this kind of using your assets to be able to get consumption without selling your assets idea.
Yeah, which is the worst idea I've ever heard of in human history. I cannot believe in 2024, we have access to college, we have access to economic textbooks, we have access to the internet, and people are coming up with the worst fucking economic policy I've ever heard.
So I want to talk about this for a second because
unrealized capital gains tax is unconstitutional. The Supreme Court will kill that immediately.
So I wrote a tweet maybe in March where I just said, this is the most ridiculous galaxy-brained idea in the history of the world. And then a bunch of accounts kind of ran with it, and it went mega, mega viral. And it was the one time that I've kind of had a political tweet, and I immediately regretted it, just because your mentions are just like a total dumpster fire. But interestingly, there was a guy, like an economist, who wrote a thread kind of in defense of this idea. And I'm like, okay, I'll engage. I want to read his thread. I want to see can smart people make some kind of an argument for it? And more or less the argument is that you have a bunch of capital that kind of gets put on the sideline when it would be better used deployed. Like you don't, that if people want to borrow, that's fine, but you should really incentivize them to sell assets to, instead, because you want that capital to be at play or whatever. And his line of reasoning, it was a great example of his line of reasoning made a lot of sense, but he never got to the most obvious thing, which was if you do something like in the tax proposal that I think Harris put out, the proposal basically said this only impacts you if your stock is publicly traded. And I'm like, do these people not understand exactly what this would cause? This would just incentivize people to never go public, right? Like we've already had enough of a problem with companies staying private as long as they possibly can and the public missing out on some of the upside. Like there's no Microsofts these days that are going public at a couple $100 million. Companies are waiting till they're $1 billion or $5 billion. And who loses out is the middle class that could be investing in these companies. And so it's always interesting to me how people can be really smart and then miss the most obvious thing, which is the last thing you want to do is disincentivize people being able to build big companies that can go public.
So this unrealized capital gains tax thing, the Democrats will never even try to pass it. Okay. Like they were talking about the taxing the carried interest, right, for a while, and that got killed. This is just a Democrat talking point to rally the left, to rally their base. And people just believe this. And after Kamala gets elected, they're just going to drop it. It's just going to go away. It's going to be a compromise and it's all going to fall out. So it's really just a bunch of noise that will never, ever happen. Yes, it's totally stupid. Yes, I believe it's unconstitutional. But it's the same thing as eliminating the carried interest. Like all these fund managers live off carried interest. All these Silicon Valley guys, PE guys, many of them are Democrats. It's just not going to happen.
Yeah, that's actually Wall Street Journal or New York Times. Somebody had an article that was basically like, even, Kamala's advisors were like, yeah, this is a bridge too far. No, or not advisors, her donors were like, no, we're not going to go for this. Like nobody who is supplying significant money to politics wants that to happen. So it's a pretty big, I mean, I don't know if loophole's the right word, but it's just an interesting nuance of the system. And if you're really, really crazy, what you can do is say you have 100 million in assets, I can go borrow 60 million and then plow all that into stocks, and I can super juice my returns. Now, the other side of that is obviously that's a good way to also go to zero, which is, again, why you need somebody who prevents you from doing stupid things. But there also are some stories of people that have done things like that, where they borrow against an asset and then they plow that into another asset. And I mean, real estate is basically this game, right? Real estate is just kind of like you get assets that you borrow, then you to buy another asset with debt, and you stack them up.
Yeah, totally. Look, and I'm not we got totally derailed. I'm not a fucking Jeff Bezos apologist, right? Tax him, I don't give a fuck. But it is literally the worst idea in human history. And I understand it's never going to get passed. I understand it's just a negotiation point, but it is like saying, let's nuke the whales. It is like the dumbest, smallest brain idea. And I can't believe it's on national discussion. Let's go back to wealth managers, because I think this is it's an educational piece that I think young entrepreneurs should know about, right? When to do it, what do you pay, who are the players? You should do it when you have 7 figures in liquid net worth, not tied to your business, okay? And I highly recommend people should just have a wealth manager for the 5 reasons we laid out. Some of them are bullshit, some of them are not. It will help you not screw yourself. It'll help you not plug every dollar back into your business, okay? And if you have $1 million in Robinhood, you could lose access to the account, you could get hacked, whatever else. Just the safety piece alone, when you have 7 figures in net worth, you should find a wealth manager and plug it in. And you should not be chasing alpha. You should not be trying to beat the market. You will underperform the market. But the first 10 million of your life is trying to get as fast to 10 million as possible, get as much money as possible. Once you hit 10 million, it's making sure you do not go to zero, because going to zero is so painful. Jason, do you want to talk about the hell part of your life when you were fighting off going to zero?
Well, all I'll say is try not to get divorced. We'll leave it there.
Postscript is the only SMS solution you should be using as a brand store owner, because their sole focus is on SMS. They're the biggest innovators in the space, and their latest launch of Postscript AI is proof of this. I got to see the demo a couple months back and immediately wanted in on the beta. And over the course of a 4-week period, Postscript generated for Ridge over $124,000 in AI-driven revenue. We used a holdout, so I can confidently say 12,000 of that is purely incremental. A 9% lift in browse abandonment, 14% on checkout, and our best performing abandoned cart flow had a 29% lift on click-through rate and a 21% lift on earnings per message. Should I say that again, but maybe a little slower? 12,000 in incremental revenue, a 9% lift on our browse abandonment, 14% lift on our checkout abandonment, and a 21% lift on our abandoned cart automation. And the work from our team was close to zero to generate these numbers. There's 2 things about Postscript AI that I'm personally really excited about. One is Brand Center. It's the central nucleus of all of their AI message testing. We get to feed them exactly how we want to sound, what words to say, avoid, who we want our personas to be, and tune that over time to make sure our AI-generated messaging is on brand as much as possible. I think Brand Center will power messaging everywhere potentially. Right now, we've just got it in our SMS flows, but I think it can go a lot more places. The second one is, now that you've got this Brand Center, you can do infinity testing. So you can imagine maybe once, twice, 3 times a quarter, we're setting up an A/B test to understand, is this message better than this one? Infinity testing does that in the background constantly, testing hundreds and thousands of variations to identify the optimal messaging given each flow. When I first heard this described, it immediately made me think that A/B testing feels very archaic. So I'm incredibly excited about both Brand Center and Infinity testing. So if you're in D2C marketing, you need to check this out. They've completely transformed how the team at Ridge is approaching SMS. Go to postscript.io/AI to learn more.
Well, I think this is actually the most interesting part of the discussion, because Sean, you're really touching on something which honestly, I don't know if wealth advisors help you with this or not, which is, as an entrepreneur, asking yourself, how quickly do I try and extract value out of the business to my personal balance sheet? Because if that capital obviously is the fuel for the business to grow. And if I take capital out, the earlier I take capital out, the more I kind of kneecap my business. But if I don't take capital out, we've all heard the stories of people that had businesses that looked really promising and then it kind of went away. It went poof. And I had a conversation with my brother, I think this was probably about 2 years ago. And he was just like, listen, you're not personally liquid enough. Yeah, the company is doing great and things look great, but you are not doing a good enough job of pulling out money and staying personally liquid. And he was right. Like I kept pushing back in every chip because that's what I've been doing for 6-7 years. So Sean, I'd love to hear your perspective, Jason's perspective on how early on do you start trying to pull chips off the table for the personal balance sheet?
Well, Mike, before we go there, the question is it really, like, when is it possible to do it, right? Like, because it's one thing to say, oh, you want to pull some chips off. Everyone wants to pull some chips off. Like, we haven't up until very recently, we haven't sold any equity, right? Up until this year. Everybody knows about the Fox deal, so there was some equity there. And HexCloud has done a couple of small dividend recaps, and we're profitable. So the owners have been able to take out profit, but there's still like a massive slug of value that is really illiquid private company stock, just like your equity in Simple Modern, right? So have
Right.
you? I think it'd be interesting to know, like, your perspective on that, and what are the options for someone in that position? Because I don't think there are a ton of options.
Well, there's not early on. I mean, early on, it really comes down to how, like let's say you're making 500,000 in EBITDA or 1.5 million in EBITDA. It just kind of becomes like, do I want to grow the business or am I okay with the business flatlining here and pulling all the, profit capital out? And there's people that make those decisions and turn them into lifestyle businesses, and that's, like that's one decision. I didn't take that route. I was kind of more like, I want to go, I want to build something that's pretty significant in size, whereas other people are like, I just want to get to the first million on my balance sheet or something. And I think the risk reward changes up a lot. So we basically didn't do distributions for 6 or 7 years. And then it wasn't until we broke into kind of the hyper profitability that you're talking about, Jason. But even then, I'm the biggest shareholder and I've got these minority shareholders. And so how I structured distributions, I had to think about, like, am I trying to maximize how much I get out, or am I trying to kind of spread the wealth so that my other kind of core leaders, they're really taken care of? And going back to the point that Sean made earlier, one of the reasons why you're not chasing alpha unless you've gone through like a total exit situation is that 90 something percent of my net worth is always going to be tied up in the company as long as I hold it, unless I run this thing into the ground. It's just like the math of the situation makes it almost impossible that I can get so liquid. And so you're definitely not chasing the alpha on, if let's say I have, several $1 million liquid that are in the market, like, who cares if I'm making 15% versus 12%? It's fairly insignificant compared to what the company's doing, because there's 90 something percent of my net worth is tied up over there. So I would say this. I think that it is wise to get enough money out of the business where you're not thinking about personal finances when you're making business decisions. I think I've seen people make very poor business decisions because they were spooked about their personal finances. And that's where some of the absolute worst decision making happens.
So, Sean, you asked me about my own personal hell. I made a joke about divorce, but the back in the financial crisis in 2018 was actually when I transitioned to become a banker. I was a CFO before that, and I ran corporate development and M&A for a big public company. And it's funny, I worked for this. It was a great tech company, but all of the C-level execs there were maybe 6, 7, 8 years older than me, and they were never leaving. And my ego got the best of me, and I was like, I'm going to leave and I'm going to go be a banker. And I went to work in January 1st, 2008 for a boutique investment banking firm in New York. And we closed like 7 deals in 7 months. And then the financial crisis hit, like literally right after I bought an apartment in New York City. And I did not get a paycheck for 14 months. It was insane. I had just bought an apartment. I had a house in Connecticut. And so I'd put a lot of money to work, and I kind of misjudged how much liquidity I would need. And I think that is a huge thing that a lot of people do. And I see it with a lot of rich people. I see it. You see with the athletes, right? You mentioned the athletes, right? Like you, people just think that things are going to continue to go the way they are. And you have to have, like, Warren Buffett used to call it a margin of safety. Graham and Dodd, the best like seminal investment book that Warren Buffett like lived by to build Berkshire is about having a margin of safety in his investing. I think you need a margin of safety in your portfolio. You need to have like years worth of liquidity in your portfolio, no matter what you do. Like being able to pay all of your bills and finance all of your life. And so when people talk about stocks and investing in equities, like if you're the money that you put in equities, you need to be able to leave it there for 5 years. You really should not put money into equities unless you can just leave it there for 5 years and not touch it. But more to the point, my pain came from a massive economic shock and a misjudgment in the amount of liquidity that I should have had to weather a pretty substantial storm. And there's no telling, like there could be another storm like that any day. It looked, when COVID first hit, that looked like that might be it. It looked like that, and actually didn't. It worked out. Forget about like the economy and inflation and the national debt, which is out of control now. But at the end of the day, there are a lot of people that were hurt by COVID, but there are also a lot of winners. I think across the board in the financial crisis, there were way fewer winners. And so having that level of liquidity, I think that to me, that's the best piece of advice that I could give anyone. It's like have years worth of liquidity available to you. And if not, you just shouldn't be taking risk unless you have that.
So I want to chime in with one thing that wealth advisors can't do. I don't think. Wealth advisors can't help you to understand the purpose of what you're trying to get out of your money. And they can help you try and figure out how to grow it, and with their cut along the way. But like, I think the problem most people have when it comes to money is that they don't really think about it from a first principles perspective of what am I trying to kind of accomplish here and what really matters. And I've got this theory that when we don't have a strong sense of purpose or mission, that we just kind of default to the scoreboard of money, basically. That it's like, well, I don't really know, what I'm trying to accomplish or where I'm going. So I guess I'll just try and make a lot of money. And the way that this plays out, and this is probably like the tangible advice, is that the easiest thing to do is to control your consumption and to control like the lifestyle that you live at. And a financial advisor can't do that, right? A financial advisor can help you make smart investments, but they can't help you to get your personal burn rate to a reasonable level. Like that's got to come from within. They can tell you your personal burn rate's too high, but that's got to be something that comes from within. And so I don't know. It's a couple of things I'd tack on. Do you have a clear sense of what you're trying to accomplish with your money? And do you have control over your own expenditures? Do you have discipline when it comes to your spending? Because if not, all this stuff we're talking about today is not going to be much help. I know people that have 9 figures and feel stressed about money. And feel like they have no purpose they don't know what they're going to do with it, like, and this is kind of, I'm going to give a talk at some point about this idea. Growing up, I had this dog that we adopted, and this dog just loved to chase cars. And I don't know what it thought was going to happen, if it ever caught a car, but it loved chasing cars. And I think about myself sometimes, and I'm like, I'm kind of like the dog that caught the car sometimes. It's like you finally build the really successful business and it's like, okay, great. Now what's the point And a lot of people get to that point and they're like, I don't know, actually. I've been so focused on whether or not I could build a big company or I could get to $10 million in net worth or whatever, that I never stopped to think about what I was really trying to do, or what I was going to, why it was worth being there. And so those are the questions that financial advisors can never answer. And it's one of the reasons why I'm convinced that, like, after a certain point of wealth, like, happiness doesn't really scale up with wealth, because unless you have a clear sense of what you're trying to do with it, it doesn't matter.
But you mentioned, Mike, people that are stressed about money with 9 figures, right? And
Yeah.
these are personality traits. Like, I don't know, it was Sean who was talking about, putting money in trust for Iverson, or was it you, Mike? Sorry.
Yeah.
But like, that's the thing. There are very wealthy people. They just can't help themselves. And don't
Right.
be that person. Like, don't be that. It's just like, it's so easy to want to acquire these material things. It's so easy. I think everyone suffers from it to a certain extent. I certainly do. I've come in contact, like, there are some people that are spenders and there's some people that are savers, and it's like almost like innate. And I'm always telling people, save your money. Like, when people who work for me or people who I meet and they do well, something good happens financially, I'm always like, save your money. It's actually a lot harder to do than you think.
Totally. Now, I want to circle back last 1 minute of the podcast. Jason, you brought up, when should people take money out of their business, right? And I want to say the difference between e-com brands and VC brands, and why I think it is oil and water, is VC brands, there's, like, if you're a VC company, there is a single outcome. There is a IPO. There is an acquisition. There is, like, you lose money for 24 months or 36 months in a row, and then all of a sudden you get a fuck ton of money and you have no salary, and, like, you grind it out the whole time. Our businesses can produce cash flow and profit and distributions, right? So you can take a salary, you can take distributions, you can take debt fueled distributions, what Jason alluded to earlier. It's called a debt recap or a dividend recap. You can do something like that, or you can sell equity. Rich has never done any sort of debt recap. We've never sold equity, but all of the partners have been able to take out 7 figures because we have a profitable business. Now, you have to choose between buying rocket fuel and putting some money in your pocket sometimes, right? Jason could not do distributions for the past 2 years because he was buying rocket fuel with every fucking dollar he could. Rocket fuel being pans. This guy was cashing every dollar he could to buy more pans because the markup, the demand was insane, right?
Trust me, we're literally just, our VP of Finance and I, we sat down yesterday in the office, and we're kind of like thinking about, what can we distribute at the end of the year? Our numbers are we're hitting, there's some pretty good numbers, right? And it's like, but we still cannot. I mean, I'm just like scratching my head after paying all the taxes and having enough working capital. It's like 30% of the net profit. That's the number. 30% of our net profit might be available for distribution.
And that's if you're not growing really fast. And if you're growing really fast, that all gets eaten up, right?
Well, what I mean is, like, last year we grew triple digits. This year, we're growing mid double digits. So it should theoretically be a little easier because we're buying less inventory. Like Sean was saying, it was like last few years were crazy, rocket fuel having to buy, and we still have some seasonality in it, but we're having to buy less because instead of growing 100%, we're growing, call it 50.
Yeah, Jason, you have debt and equity, right? I think a good rule, and we'll end on this, is 40-40-20 or 30-30-30, which is 30% to the tax man, 30% working capital, 30% of, and this is the profit number, not revenue, not anything else. So if you do 100 million in net income, you have a 15 million net income number. It has to be not EBITDA. EBITDA is not real for this. You would take $5 million of that 15 million and you pay taxes. You take $5 million of that, you leave in working capital, and you could pay out 5 million. If you're lucky, most brands are probably 40-40-20.
Yeah. So we're going to be like, well, the most important part that I care about is what we can take out is like 30% of the net. Like, so a bunch to taxes, a bunch to inventory, and then the remaining 30. So 70% we can't touch. It's going to taxes or inventory, and 30% is what we can take out. And man, that's just not a good feeling.
All right, guys, we'll end it there, and we'll have more tips coming to you. Talk to you later. You made it. An amazing episode of the Operators Podcast. Thank you for being here. Thank you for listening. Thank you for subscribing to the newsletter. Thank you to Fulfill, the best sponsor on earth. Northbeam, Postscript. They're tied for 2 of the best sponsors on earth. Love them. Love what they do for us. Thank you for being here. Subscribe, like, share. Follow me on Twitter. Follow the other guys on Twitter. Talk to you later. Goodbye.